we'll get going. Cool. Hey everyone, we're just going to have a couple of seconds while we wait for everyone to come in, and then we'll kick off. Morning. I can see people coming in, raising their hand. Feel free to drop us a line and tell us where you're coming from this morning, or maybe it's your afternoon for those further up in the world. Just give it a couple more minutes. I know we have quite a few registrations today, so I want to give everybody the time to make their way in. Dialing in from hotel quarantine. Hello, Tom. That is a 2020 mood if I've ever heard it. Now we might get started. I am conscious that we've got a lot to get through today. So for those who haven't met me before, good morning and welcome to Giants Weekly. I'm Melia and I'm part of the team here at Blackbird. And I'd like to first begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet. We pay our respects to the elders, present, past and emerging, and we acknowledge their spiritual connection to country. Today, we're joined by Nikki Brown, a partner at Ignition Lane and a former founder herself. As Nikki said, sales can seem like the scary wizardry part of the startup journey, but it doesn't have to be. So in this session, Nikki will take us through the practical steps of getting your sales machine rolling, including what a great repeatable process looks like, how to use data to streamline your efforts, and the tech stack that can supercharge your sales process. So as I mentioned, we've got a lot to get through today, so we're going to launch straight into the presentation. But as we go, please send any questions you have into our Zoom Q&A, and we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end to answer those. So let's get started. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you. Thanks, Melia. Okay, let me share my screen first. Thanks everyone for joining. Give me a second. Share. Okay. Great. Let me get the right screen going. Okay, hopefully you can see Melia. Give me the thumbs up. Yes, sweet. Okay, so thanks for joining me bright and early or late in the afternoon or wherever you may be from quarantine. I'm not a morning person, so you're going to have to forgive me if I jumble up words or skip over things. So today I want to give you some really practical insights into some of the most important things to get right when you're trying to build scale in sales and you're trying to build momentum. I'm so super passionate about this topic, and I could talk about a dozen aspects of sales in depth, including hiring, sales incentive schemes, prospecting, product marketing, B2C sales, pricing and packaging, and all the go-to-market models and everything in between. But today we're going to focus on giving you some really key thoughts and questions on helping you figure out the best scalable and most efficient sales model for your product and your business. So quick thoughts on me. This is me, Nikki. I was a former believer that sales was a job for talkers, firmly in the camp now that it's a job for people who are listeners and who are super, super passionate about the product that they're working with. I'm also formerly an accidental head of sales at startups. So I was a specialist in strategy and operations. At one of the startups I worked for, my first day on the job, the chief commercial officer made a very rapid exit on the first day. And I found myself as the head of sales with literally zero exposure to sales. I didn't even know what sales was. I'd never met a proper salesperson, but it was the best thing that happened to me. And I've never looked back. Love sales. So currently, I'm on a mission to challenge the sales status quo and change how we think about sales. And I also help startups and scale-ups with growth and product. So let's get on to it. So here is the Universal Sales Challenge, whether you're Amazon, Airbnb, or you've got your very first startup and you're trying to get customers, here is the Universal Sales Challenge. You want to get as many paying customers as possible at the lowest cost possible. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to do product-led growth, partner-led growth, influencer-led growth, the list goes on. We're all looking for new ideas and ways of driving sales growth without spending a bunch of money. And this challenge is 1,000 times more important for startups, because it's super risky business to take a stab with go-to-market or sales to figure out what's going to work for you, because there's no one solution fits all. And what's really challenging for you guys is you're trying to survive and you're trying to grow your customer base with as much capital efficiency as possible. So we're going to look at 3 factors that, if you nail them, will help you become an efficient sales machine. So here are the 3 key drivers for becoming a sales machine. So we're going to look at the one thing that all great sales machines do to drive sales, whether you're Airbnb or Amazon. We're going to follow the customer breadcrumbs, and we're going to Goldilocks your sales stack. So let's start with the one thing that all the great sales machines do. So this is what they do. They know their core customers better than they know themselves. And Jeff Bezos calls this customer obsession. But what does that mean in practice? So the first thing they do, these all great sales machines do, is they start by identifying and focusing on their highest quality customer. So these are the customers who are already sold on your solution and how it solves their pain points or meets their needs. They will pay a premium for your product. They'll be a fan for life if you deliver your value proposition. And they really want you to succeed and willing to talk to you if you're willing to listen. The second things that all great sales machines do is they make it really easy for customers to buy their product. And this doesn't just mean doing product-led growth or freemium, it means selling to them the way they want to buy, in whatever way that may. And that's not necessarily just asking them outright and saying, hey guys, what do you want, how do you want to buy? You definitely need to do that, but it's also by observing and offering them other ways to buy that they may not necessarily think about, but that suits their wants and needs. The third thing is understanding that sales doesn't stop with the first signature on the contract or from the first checkout of basket. Retaining a customer is way, way cheaper than acquiring new ones. And so this is where product marketing, product customer success, and customer service are all critical parts of that loop for repeat sales, for upsells and renewals. And finally, all the great sales machines stay close to their core customer always. So obviously this means a lot of data, but this also means that you never lose touch and never lose sight of your highest quality customers, because these customers will be your Sherpa, so they'll show your way to growth, and they'll be your canary. They'll indicate the signs that there is a problem that might challenge your sales model or your business in general. So here are 3 questions that you can ask yourself to answer the question about how the customer can help you become a sales machine. So who are my customers where product customer fit is the strongest? Secondly, how and where do they buy? Like, what's the buyer journey and what are their decision drivers? And thirdly, what will keep them as a customer in the long term? What is a customer journey for you? Right, let's move on to following the customer breadcrumbs. So what does that mean? That means the right data, so not just any super data, will drive sales repeatability. So we all know that we should be using data, but it's how you use that data which will determine if you and when you can build sales efficiency and scales. We are so spoiled by the amount of customer data that we can access. So the really hard part is actually figuring out what customer data is important to you and your business. So let's figure out how to do that. The first thing we need to do to follow the customer breadcrumbs is to actually pinpoint which data will act as your Sherpa and your canary. So this means figuring out what are the key metrics and what is the data you need to collect to measure those metrics, to put the floodlights on the growth opportunities, but also the risks to growth. The second thing is that product and customer insights data is just as powerful as sales data, and I would say in some instances, probably even more. So this is not just the data that you collect, when people click on your website or when they check out of Basket. This is the data of them actually using your product that you can observe. And this helps you to identify and profile your target customer segments with laser accuracy. And this is the reason why this is important, is because identifying this with accuracy is actually the foundation for sales efficiency. The more targeted and accurate you are, the cheaper it is to sell to these customers, and the less money you're going to waste trying to convince people who aren't necessarily a perfect fit for your product to buy your product. So the third thing you need to do is actually to organize your data to answer key questions that will help you to identify patterns. So data is everywhere, but it's only really useful if you know what question you're trying to answer. And it may be, are my customers who are buying my product also fans of Disney? So you start with informed hypotheses, and then you collect, organize, and analyze all your data to test these hypotheses. And finally, when you find those strong patterns, when you answer these hypotheses, automate wherever you find these patterns. So if you have customer or sales data that shows a particular pattern to be true, automate that off your to-do list. The caveat is that if you are finding that you are not seeing strong patterns, you have to stay close to where that is without automating it, and then you've got to try and smooth it out and find the predictability before you can automate it. So automation is actually what leads to scale. So here are some 3 questions that you need to ask yourself in regards to data. So what key customer metrics and data will be my canary and my Sherpa? What questions do I need to answer to pinpoint customer patterns? And what do I need to know to be predictable that I can automate? Final section. So how do we actually Goldilocks our sales stack, and what does this mean? So this means don't drown in your tech. Scale your sales stack as you need it. Just like data, there's an incredible amount of tools available in sales to support your sales effort. But also, like data, it can actually bog you down if you aren't strategic about which tools, when, and how to use them. And getting that plan and timing right for how you use your sales tech stack will help you support your growth rather than slow you down, because it can slow you down if you don't get that right. So let's have a look at how we actually do that. The first thing is that I'm a strong believer that there's no sales without a CRM, and it doesn't matter if you're B2B, B2C, D2C, you have to track your customers and your interactions because that will drive efficiency and it will drive knowledge about what's happening in your sales cycle and with your customers. And you should start with something that you need for right now before launching straight into the A380 of CRMs, because they are actually quite complex and it can be expensive and time intensive to set things up, and also to find the answers that you need in these really complex systems if they're simple answers you need. The second thing is that customer and product data tools are going to be your best friend. So you'll actually learn a lot about your customer through these tools without even having to ask them a single question. But of course, you should speak to your customers, especially the core ones. It doesn't replace these touch points. It just gives you another lens on these core customers. And again, helps you to really target their profile. The third thing, automation tools should make your life easier, not harder. So pick tools that are work for your stage of automation, otherwise you'll create more work for yourself. Automation should really do more things for you and reach more people without reducing quality and without adding extra burden to yourself. Finally, invest in systems that will actually grow with you. So there's nothing worse than doing a data migration. So if you're going from Airtable to Salesforce, make sure you do it at the right time. Also pick tools that aren't too complex, but give you what you need. You may not necessarily need Salesforce if you've only got sort of 2 or 3 enterprise customers, but you may need it if you're tracking thousands and thousands of very small subscription customers. It depends. It really depends on the situation. So here are 3 questions to ask when you're Goldilocksing your sales stack. So how do I collect and organize data that helps me understand my customers quickly and in depth? What tools do I need today to make sales and customer decisions quickly? And what are the indicators that it's time for me to add more sales tech? Final thoughts. If you stay close to your customer, you will always, always win. That is my mantra. And that picture is actually Brian Chesky, co-founder and CEO of Airbnb, with a B&B owner in Cape Town in 2017, when they were making their big Africa push. So even Brian Chesky stays close to his customers. So thank you for listening to my Speedy Presso. Melia, sorry for going over just a wee bit. And let's get to questions.
That was brilliant. Thank you, Nikki.
I'll stop the share.
Yeah, sounds great. And then we'll get the Q&A started. So if you haven't already sent your questions in, I can see some flooding in, but make sure you pop them in and we'll do our best to get to them. First question, Nikki. In a B2C context, how early do you think that you need to bring on a dedicated salesperson or team, as opposed to a founder or another team member trying to do that role?
Yeah, so it really depends on, again, how much you're automating and what your sales efforts are. B2C can be, it can be quite a streamlined effort if you've got quite a simple product, but if you're having to do much more of a concerted marketing effort because you've got a much broader stack of products that you're trying to sell, or it's more complex, then you're going to have to bring on someone a little bit earlier. This also depends on your capacity and your expertise. If you are not a marketing expert, then you'll probably want to bring someone on a lot earlier than a B2B business, for instance. But it should be a generalist, not someone who's very specialist. You start hiring very specialist people. Doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, when you start scaling and you can afford to find specialists when you start sort of segmenting what you're doing as a business.
Gotcha. Another question, are you able to give an example where the product or customer data, insight data made a difference? So
so many. So we, for instance, I worked at an enterprise B2B SaaS business where we were selling a very new product to market, that had never been before. It was a data product, and it seems like a really simple thing, but we were doing webinars like this, not webinars, but online demos. And we were tracking the length of the demo. We're doing all these analytics, started doing analytics on the demos. And the thing that we realized was, for our target audience, the most success that we had was if the demo was 15 minutes long, no longer. That was the sweet spot. And we took that data and we applied it to all the demos that we did. And the conversion rate from demo to ultimately close just shot through the roof. I think it increased by over 100%. So using that kind of data, not just that was a sales data example, but if you're looking for triangulating all the data, like product usage, customer, market, sales data, you'll start refining and understanding what are the levers you can pull to actually get better conversion.
Great. Getting quite a few questions about tools that you would recommend, maybe some product and consumer insight tools, but also maybe any CRM or automation tools, particularly for startups at the earlier stage.
Yeah, so this is the hardest thing about being really super early is there is, like I said, there is so many tools out there. Even just in marketing, they did the Martech map and not long ago, there's 8,000 tools, where there was 100 a decade ago. So you can see the real explosion of tools. So it can be really hard to figure out what you need. I think that in terms of CRM, which is the fundamental tool that you need, most people won't need Salesforce. I think that most people will probably start with Airtable or HubSpot or Pipedrive. I love Pipedrive. I think it's a really good starter CRM. It's got everything you need. It's got the, the Kanban. It's got all the tracking. You want something, if you're trying to grow with it, that can have all the integrations. So, email integrations, MailChimp integrations, email tracking and metrics integrations as well. Like there's a bunch of, like, with Yesware, Salesloft, all those sort of ancillary software that you want to be able to plug into your CRM. And that's something you can't necessarily do with Airtable, which is why I really love Pipedrive. So that's the one I'd be starting with.
Great. For early stage startups, again, maybe not so much of a tool question, but what would you recommend for founders or for operators to do to really better find, target and reach their customers, like a traction channel strategy or framework? The person asking the question mentions it seems like everyone tends to instinctively be drawn to SEM and socials.
Yeah. I think, well, this goes back to really understanding who your target customer is. And so if one of the key questions I think you need to ask yourself early on, and I mean, your market opportunity really well. People really know their market opportunity really well. The thing that you need to understand better is everything about your target customer, but also everything about your product, right? So getting that product customer fit exactly right. How does your product solve the customer pain point? And who is the really key customer where that is like almost like a perfect match? And when you figure that out, you can do, SEM or SEO or any other thing, but the most important thing is that you need to figure out where they are. And they may be in a Facebook group on Facebook, or they may be like buyers of another product. You just need to figure out where they are, and you need to do the right automation or the right tool to try and reach those people. So it could be an email campaign, or it could be targeted LinkedIn ads. You need to figure out what that channel is according to where they are.
Gotcha. Do you have any thoughts on the relationship between sales and customer service, and how you can make really smooth transitions between getting customers active and then keeping them engaged?
Oh, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because I am a firm believer that sales, customer success or customer service and product actually are completely intertwined, and they should never be completely separate, because it is a cycle. Like those three things feed in together. And as I was saying before, like customer success is such a critical part of the sales process, because that is what's going to drive repeatability. It doesn't matter if it's B2B or B2C. Like return customers are what is going to drive growth of your business. It's not necessarily going to be the new customers. And so if you're a B2B business, customer success or customer service should really be part of the sales process. It shouldn't be just a team that picks up your customer the moment that the first sale is closed. It should be part of the sales process, and so they should be involved. They should be talking to the customers before even a sale is inked, ideally. For B2C customers, customer service should be really, it should be part of designing the customer experience as well, because they know how customers want to, they're talking to the customers every day, so they have an intimate knowledge of the customer, and that should really be feeding into the sales process and understanding who your target customer is, their profile.
Do you have any insights or reference materials relating to selling B2B when the end consumer is not the direct customer? So for instance, FMCG sales or wholesale buyers. We've touched a lot on B2B and B2C relationships, but question about that kind of next level.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. This is actually a question that we get a lot with the customers that we work with. So this is a situation where it's channel sales. And so it's tricky because you kind of have two customers. You have your end customer, who's your end user. And so you have to profile that in terms of the product that you're developing. But from a sales perspective, the same principles apply. So you need to think about your partner or your channel person who is ultimately your customer, whether they buy wholesale or they're just sort of a channel, a route. You need to map them the same way that you map and understand your end consumer. And so the way you interact with them, sometimes some people have, well, you should have very separate, have separate teams that deal with the channel partner versus the team that deals with the end user. And so all your product marketing, your value propositions, they're all different for that channel partner, and you should make them different and very specific to that partner. I mean, we've got customers that we've worked with who've now got a channel partnership where they've completely pivoted the way that they their website is, and they've done all their marketing towards that channel partner, because that is a person who's actually going to pay their bills. The end customer is important in terms of sort of helping that channel partner sell the product, but at the end of the day, it's that channel partner who is buying your product, and you need to convince them as well.
That's a really great point. We talked before about the distinction between doing it yourself as a founder and that first or, you know, early sales hire. Do you have any advice on how you would structure salary, bonus, communications, or even just how compensation for that initial salesperson, or even maybe more generally, if you look at a bonus structure or a salary structure, if there's anything you've observed?
Yeah, so this question is industry specific in many ways. It's an easier question to answer for B2B. So, I mean, there are very specific benchmarks and expectations for salespeople in terms of commissions. So, you know, their OTE, their on-target earnings, is generally split 50-50. So they'll get a salary, and then their bonus or their commissions will definitely be like sort of another 50%, like equivalent to their salary as their total package, typically. And then there'll be, you know, incentives for exceeding their quotas and things like that, and meeting certain sort of, if you've got want to get certain named accounts, there'll be sort of boosters for that as well. The important thing, I think, when you're hiring your first salesperson is that incentives are really important to make sure they're actually selling and you're getting the growth that you want. For me, I think it's less important that you are spending a lot of money on a salesperson, and more important that you're getting the sales that you need. Which means that you have to set up the KPIs in the right way as well, because what you don't want to do is create perverse incentives where they're just signing customers that won't necessarily stay customers in the long term. You want your customers to hang around. You don't want just customers who'll be a one-off customer and who'll potentially you're going out to market and telling people that it's not a great product. So there are incentives and disincentives that you need to think about.
Yeah. And final question, and sorry, we haven't been able to get through everyone's questions, but we will, if you've got time, Nikki, we can stay on for maybe one more after this. So I've lied, it's not the final, but second last. Can you suggest any books, blogs, resources to help people learn about the sales as a science methodology and build their confidence?
So sales as a science methodologies, I guess it's my methodology, so I guess I'd have to start a blog. Definitely sign up to the Ignition Lane Substack if you want to learn more about, I mean, we always cover different go-to markets and what's happening in the tech world there. Otherwise, how about I shoot across a bunch of like great resources that I love that kind of, I guess, share my philosophy when it comes to sales, and then you can share that with the audience.
That would be brilliant. We those who have joined us for Giants before know we always send out a newsletter with the recording and with the key insights. So we would love to include some further reading from you, Nikki. And yeah, maybe petition for Nikki to start her own publication or blog.
Yeah, I might get onto it.
Yeah. Final question: any important factors to consider for expansion into overseas markets?
Yeah, really great question. This is one of the hardest things to do, primarily because there are some things in sales that you can scale when you go internationally, and other things that you can't. And this is to remember that core customers and your buyers across geographies will have different preferences for how they want to buy, and what messages resonate with them. And so figuring out what is universal and what's not is a really important part of scaling internationally in terms of sales. And hiring your salespeople internationally is really hard. And so use local knowledge to figure out what salesperson you need to hire. And they should always match like your culture and your brand as well. So lots of things to consider. That wasn't a great answer, but just to say that it's really hard and there's lots of things to consider.
Yeah, and great people make all the difference, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. We really
Pleasure.
appreciate you joining us today. And on behalf of everyone on the call, thanks so much for your advice. Before we wrap up today, just also want to let everyone know that we're announcing a new Giants product today, specifically for aspiring and early stage founders. So launching in January, we're launching a knowledge sharing platform called Giants for founders at the beginning of their journey to get one-on-one mentoring, connect with other founders, and dive into our best resources. So keep an eye out for that newsletter today, where we'll have an exclusive link for you to be some of the first to sign up. And for those who are joining us, thanks, Nikki. For those who are joining us next week, we'll have Isabel Clarkson, Head of People at Propeller, talking to us about employee branding. So thanks, everyone, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.